Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers and then we'll start our Wednesday class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Tatsavitravarenayam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Satgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Amritam Gamya Om Sehna Vavatu Sehna Bhunaktu Saviryam Karvavahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi Om Shanti 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 Om. For the last 3 weeks, we've been learning about the Shat Ripus. Ripu means the enemies. Shat means 6. So we have talked about or learned about the first 3 in the last 3 Wednesdays. Kam, Krodh, Lobh. And we went through several ways to understand what this Kam is. These are Sanskrit terms, so there are several meanings of each term. But when we call it a Ripu or an enemy, this is the enemy for a practitioner, for a sadhak, who wants to achieve to that ultimate goal, Kam. Okay? So it's translated as lust also. It's translated as excessive material desires also, Kamanai. And Krodh, that's the anger. And the Lobh, last week we learned about the greed. When our desires do not get fulfilled, we get angry. When they do get fulfilled, we develop greed. We are never satisfied. We want more and more. So that's how they all become our enemies. Enemies for a sadhak, for a practitioner, for a person who wants to reach the highest. So today we are going to look at the 4th enemy. The Sanskrit term for this is mad. Mad. Loose translation of mad is pride. There is a sattvic mad also. Sattvic mad is an aspirant that you want to succeed in your sadhana. You want to handle your practical realities effectively. You need to be proud of being born in a human embodiment. Proud of following the path of yoga. Proud that you have the inner resources to progress on the spiritual path leading to liberation. Those are called sattvic mad. So in order to progress, we need this sattvic mad. So sattvic, they are the values which help in the process of evolution. So if they are helping us, then we will evolve. However, there are rajasic and tamasic forms of pride. These are the one which are called mad. And this rajasic and tamasic pride must be quelled day by day with great zeal. Otherwise, we won't see any progress. What are the other translations of this mad other than pride? It is egoism. conceit, vanity, arrogance, insolence, cruelty, and selfishness. All these form the family of mada and its relatives. And we are all familiar with these terms. So Sanskrit word mad is quite similar to the Sanskrit word madira, which means an intoxicating liquor. People under the influence of intoxicating liquor lose their mental balance and even their power of reasoning. The same way pride makes your mind so intoxicated that you don't know who you are. What is your goal? What is right and what is wrong? In the ancient times, there was a king in India, King Akbar. He was a great king in India. It was during the 16th century. And he had a very witty and a very wise minister whose name was Birbal. King liked Birbal. In fact, Birbal was his favorite. And that's why Birbal had many enemies among the court officers, because he was always favored by the king. One day, these officers thought up a plan to degrade Birbal. They started spreading the idea that the king was like God. They knew that Birbal would not agree to that. And if Birbal did not agree to it, king would punish him. Certainly, every king wants to be praised and could not bear anyone who would not praise him. So the officers started bowing to the king, saying, "O king, to us you are God himself." But Birbal doesn't hold that view. King Akbar, who was very pleased with this praise, looked at Birbal and said, "How is it that you do not agree with what the other officers are saying? Don't you have any reverence for me?" Birbal replied, "Why should I agree with these people? I consider you greater than God." King Akbar asked, "How so?" Because he was intrigued by that remark. Birbal replied, "If someone commits an error, God cannot drive him out of his kingdom, because his kingdom includes the entire universe. However, if someone commits an error in your kingdom, you have the power to drive him out. Therefore, you are above God." So the subtle implication of this story is that when you have ego, you place yourself above God. The things around you are controlled by God's plan, but ego becomes overly assertive and makes you feel as if you are moving this whole world. There have been many kings and emperors or other leaders in this world in the past and currently too. Humility is a divine virtue, which is the positive counterpart of pride or mad. Humility is the expression of an evolving soul, a soul that is winging its way to the divine self. Humility implies effacement of ego and it is attained by an individual in gradual degrees. So that means we have to work on it. Just like we work on our muscles or the weight or anything else which we learn, the same thing goes for humility also. When the mind is highly fulfilled without the pressure of the unconscious vasanas, that means the subtle desires, ego is transcended. And one begins to experience one's unity with the divine self. In that state of perfection, there is an utter absence of ego, a spontaneous blossoming of supreme humility. Lord Jesus, his sermon, said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." That's a great virtue of humility, and it points to its majestic power. The meekness referred to here is profoundly different from the meekness of common parlance. It is not to be confused with the dullness of mind that leads a person to simply accept without questioning whatever the world presents before him, nor is it at all like the degrading timidity that leaves many people feeling humiliated again and again in life. There's a great degree of difference. The blessed meekness praised by Lord Jesus is that yogic state of advanced personality integration. In that kind of integration, one is so profoundly in tune with cosmic will that he has no need to assert his ego. A person feels guided by the divine hand. He carries out the will of God with total surrender, with the innocent meekness of a sheep driven by the great shepherd God, the divine self. The highest state of meekness is reached when a devotee is able to totally cast his ego center into the ocean of divine self. And how does that happen? Through the intuitive realization of God. This is achieved through a mind which sees the very ego center as merely a reflection of that self and not the absolute reality within. And all this happens with sadhana. In the lesser stages of spiritual development, the ego center seems to be all that one has, and one is constantly trying to assert the ego. But as you reflect deeply and inquire into who am I? Because this is the question a seeker asks often. Who am I? That I, which was present when I was a baby, the same I was present when I was a teenager, the same I when I was a youthful person, and same I in this old body. Who is that I? Who am I? And you gradually realize the illusoriness of the perception of ego. Because this illusion is created by the ego. Ego makes us forget who are we. We start identifying with the body. We start identifying with the accomplishments, all the degrees, all the different way others recognize us in the outer layers. That's what ego is. So the vanity involved in being a slave of egoistic consciousness. But with the sadhana, you eventually understand that the ego is not the all-important factor. Sure, it appears to be in the beginning, but due to this egoistic tension, you want to subside that with the help of the sadhana. A person who has developed such meekness of spirit enjoys a unique type of relaxation and experiences a joy which really excels the ordinary happiness. Ordinary happiness, there are terms for it, many terms for that happiness in Sanskrit. But this experience of a joy without the ego is called bliss, ananda. There's only one term for it. This person's mind is no longer under the grip of selfishness, no longer tarnished by the impressions of frustrations and sorrows that accompany egoistic consciousness. There's a burden on the mind with this ego. The radiantly healthy mind of such a person becomes a basis for intense sadhana. So in order to move into that higher realm, we got to conquer this enemy first, the ego. Mind is a form of divine energy. Remember that. That's why this mind is considered a devata by our Vedic rishis. That's why it is necessary that as aspirants, we use this energy with respect. If we use our mental energy properly and see that our mind is kept relaxed and cheerful day by day, then nature flows through that mind, creating wonders. You will begin to think powerful thoughts that you would never have imagined possible. You will begin to enjoy highly sublime feelings and even sentiments. Through that mind, you begin to discover what is really meant by universal love and non-violence, ahimsa. That kind of a mind is called a healthy mind or a truly healthy mind. Because this kind of a mind serves as a source of immense inspiration for yourself and for others also. When you acquire a mind such as that, you become the master of all the circumstances, master of all the conditions and developments within the material world around you. There is no pressure on your mind any longer, because normally if you feel there's a pressure, average person is constantly stressed with this pressure. But if you have a mind like that, no more pressure. Like a lotus, you bloom above all the conditions of the lake of the world. All the conditions, there will be some conducive conditions, some non-conducive conditions, but your mind will stay afloat. You will remain untouched by all that. It's almost like a swan you support in the lake of the world, but at any moment you can shake your wings, throw off all the water. Because normally those water particles are held in the wings, but swan just shakes them off and fly away. This is how an aspirant lives. Worldly ups and downs are there, but you should be able to shake them all off, to soar high. So when true meekness arises, you attain dominion over the material world, because the world of matter does not matter anymore. It's very insignificant. You triumph over Maya or cosmic illusion and are no longer tempted by worldly values. The abundance of the earth is for the desireless, not for the man with the desires. It's a very famous quotation. The abundance of the earth is for the desireless, not for the man with desires. When a person approaches the objects of the world with desire, what happens? That person becomes a slave to them. The objects begin to overpower the person. It becomes impossible for him to possess them in the true sense, because he feels possessed by them. Desires create slavery to the objects of the world, and a slavish mentality degrades the soul. But in the state of true meekness, the soul submits itself to God alone. Remember that word, alone. Not also. God alone. It is not tied to the objects, to the strings of desires. That's why it recovers its mastery over the earth. It rules matter. It commands circumstances. It acquires a supreme victory that echoes with an immeasurable sense of inner triumph. That's why it said in our scriptures, he who is humbler than a blade of grass. In Sanskrit, the blade of grass is called trin. In fact, the dry blade of grass. So he who is humbler than a blade of grass, because what do we see with the grass? When we walk on it, it bends. And yet more enduring than a tree. On the tree, when there are fruits, someone just keeps on shaking it or throwing stones. What does tree give? whatever tree has, the fruits or the flowers. So he who is humbler than a blade of grass and yet more enduring than a tree, he who gives respect to those who lack it, he is ever immersed in singing the praises of the Lord at all times. So when we see such a personality, that means the praises of the Lord is in every breath of that person. The outer humiliation or outer praise does not matter to this personality. These words describe the characteristics of great people whose spiritual majesty endows them with the humility and power of endurance. Just like I told you, as blade of grass bends willingly, without complaint, beneath the feet of those who walk upon them. A man of true meekness submits himself joyfully to the unfoldment of the divine will. A man of true meekness radiates a spontaneous tolerance and endurance under all circumstances. So these days we are talking about the enemies. So we are watchful of these enemies in this journey. Before this, we talked about the qualities also, and endurance was one of the qualities. Titiksha, endurance. Because they go hand in hand if we understand them properly. A person of true humility ever delight in making other people feel happy and contented. Why? Because of the spiritual strength that flows to him from within his own heart, does not seek to draw from others any consolation or sustenance or praise for himself. So this is the effect of that sadhana. Normally, we are always hungry for praise. We are always avoiding the people who will criticize us. But when we have risen to this level, with the help of our sadhana, we are at a special place. This kind of a sadhak spontaneously showers others with honor, support, and encouragement. He will hold others' hand to walk with him. He becomes the torch bearer. One who has reached great spiritual heights experiences such an extraordinary, overpowering sense of internal expansion that ego spontaneously loses all its importance. So the ego, which is so important to most of the people, for this person, does not even matter. Because mind of such a person spontaneously flows towards God. That's why. It's getting all the bliss from there, peace from there, direction from there. Everything is coming from the source, ultimate source. And that source never dries up. That source is the one which is eternal source, ever flowing. So this person has risen to that level where connected with that source. There is a saying in Sanskrit, Namanti falani vrikshaha. A tree that is laden with fruit bows down. I'm sure you have seen those trees. full of fruits. Branches almost touch the ground. So the implication of this saying is that when prosperity comes to you, when you're endowed with the blessings of life, humility should develop in your personality. And this humility, as we are talking about, is opposite of this enemy, which is called mada. If prosperity makes a person conceited, that prosperity is unhealthy prosperity. In fact, they say it, this is a venomized prosperity. So that prosperity becomes a venom. It's almost like a tasty food which has a deadly poison in it. No matter how good that food looks, no matter how hungry you are, if you know there is a poison in there, you will not even touch it. That's what happens to this kind of a personality. One who is truly humble and prosperous becomes a flawless instrument in divine hands, without ever thinking to take the credit for the miraculous results achieved by the cosmic will working through him. Because he remembers, this life is given to me by God. The time is his. Pran is his. Everything is his. Why should I take any credit? He truly understands. And he always remembers that how great is this work that I have done is never asserted by one who has attained the blessed state of meekness or humility. Always remembers it. In this overflowing sense of fulfillment, which accompanies his mental expansion, he knows that it's not the ego, but the divine will that works through human beings, producing great wonders. We know that for the vast majority of people, including us, ego is our identity. Relaxation of ego is achieved only during sleep. That is the time when ego is set aside. And it's not by our choice. It's just by unconscious biological process. And we feel relaxed. And if we can set aside this ego during the waking hours also, you can imagine how relaxed we will feel. Ego is a burden. But when you are moving from normal to supernormal awareness, you begin to discover that ego is not the source of your inspiration and your initiative. In reality, you are different from your ego. And as this understanding grows, you learn to set aside the ego by your own choice, not just only deep sleep, but by your choice, through increasing intuitional understanding. So the art of becoming free of ego is the subtlest art. It is acquired through a persistent process of personality integration, by which you bring renewed health to your body and to your conscious and unconscious mind. So it has to be developed, it has to be practiced. If you are physically healthy, it is possible for you to detach from the body. See, like if there's no pain in the mouth, no pain in the teeth, you don't even worry about those teeth. The same thing for rest of the body too. Our arms, our legs, our ears, eyes. So physically healthy body, very easy to detach. If you're mentally healthy and serene, then it's possible for you to detach yourself from the mind. If your unconscious is not pressured by impure, subtle desires, then it is possible for you to go beyond your ego. This is the way to do it. We need to learn. When we meditate also, what do we say? We detach. When we do the shavasana, what do? We detach from this body, or the mind, or the intellect, or the ego. Only then we can do the shavasana also properly. So as you balance yourself by right action, that means doing your duties properly, devotion, love for God, meditation, reflection, and of course, satsang, good association, good company. You begin to develop a harmonized personality. See, just like in order to eat balanced diet, for a healthy body, you need to make sure that all the minerals and the vitamins, all the nutrients are there. The same thing happens if you want to have a healthy inner makeup of our personality also. When you do all this, when you take care of all these aspects of your personality, you will realize that relaxing the ego is not so difficult. You begin to feel as if your spirit is a bird flying through the newly opened window of a cage. It's free to soar beyond all limitations. You don't feel burdened. You feel very light. In daily life, therefore, we should be alert not to let pride, conceit, and egoism become prominent. Consciously, we got to be aware of it. You must subjugate the promptings of the ego day by day and feel humbler than a blade of grass, and yet mightier than the mountain, lesser than a little glowworm, and yet more effulgent than the sun. These are the examples given in our Vedas, actually. The saints, they say, the flowers do not advertise their fragrance. The sun has no need to proclaim its luminosity by beating drums. The ocean has no need to sing the praises of its own profundity. And the Himalayas have no need to brag about their lofty heights. The same way, a practitioner, an aspirant who unfolds the fragrance of virtue unravels the luminosity of spiritual wisdom. Experiences the profundity of universal life. That means the life is everywhere, in everybody, everything. And ascends the heights of super consciousness. Doesn't have to, no need to indulge in pride. Or even its numerous expressions. As I was telling you earlier, there are so many ways this mud or this pride seeps into our personality. So we got to be aware of it. It's like an enemy. Any enemy from outside will be very careful. This is the enemy within. And we are the one who can conquer it through all these different techniques, which we learn in these classes and from some other scriptures also. And today also I mentioned some of them. Let's stop it here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.